The Mockery. Jake Morrison's hands trembled slightly as he stood before the viewing window of Kepler Prime space station. The distant stars seemed to mock him with their cold indifference. 3 months aboard the research vessel New Horizon had brought him to this moment, humanity's first chance to join the Galactic Council. The weight of representing his entire species pressed down on him like gravity from a massive planet. Every human alive depended on the success of this mission. "You ready for this?" Dr. Lisa Grant asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what lay ahead. Her German shepherd, Max, sat beside her with alert brown eyes, sensing the tension in the air. Jake nodded, though his confidence wavered. The space station stretched endlessly in all directions, its corridors filled with beings so alien that his mind struggled to process their forms. Some walked upright like humans, others scuttled on multiple limbs, and a few seemed to drift through the air without any visible means of propulsion. The meeting hall buzzed with activity as alien representatives took their positions. The Zephyrians dominated one section, tall, reptilian beings whose scales shifted colors with their emotions. Their leader, Counselor Vexthal, stood nearly 8 feet tall with bright green scales and piercing yellow eyes. His contemptuous glances toward the human delegation made his opinion clear. Across the chamber, the Vorak delegation clicked and gestured with rapid, precise movements. These insect-like creatures communicated through mechanical sounds translated by throat devices. Hive Speaker Clixes led their group, his compound eyes reflecting the room's lights like dark mirrors. The lumens occupied a third section, their crystalline bodies bending light into beautiful, mesmerizing patterns. They spoke in musical tones that resonated through their forms. Crystal singer Zareth represented them, her voice creating melodies even through the translation system. Jake walked to the speaking platform, feeling hundreds of alien eyes focus on him. Sweat formed on his palms, but he kept his voice steady. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, his words echoing through the vast chamber. "I come before you as a representative of humanity, seeking membership in your alliance of civilized worlds." He spoke of Earth's history, of humanity's journey from scattered tribes to a spacefaring species. He described human achievements in art, science, and philosophy. The alien delegates listened politely, but Jake sensed their boredom. They had heard similar presentations countless times before. When his formal speech ended, the questions began. Counselor Vexthal spoke first, his voice carrying authority. "Your species shows some technical ability, but we require more than simple technology. What makes humans worthy of joining the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy?" Jake had prepared for this moment. "Our strength lies in our ability to work together, to form bonds that make us stronger than the sum of our parts." Hive Speaker Clixes made rapid clicking sounds. "The Vorak understand collective thinking. We share one mind across millions of individuals. What bonds do humans possess that could compare to true unity?" This was Jake's moment. He gestured toward Lisa, who stood and walked forward with Max at her side. "We form connections not just with our own species, but with other forms of life," Jake explained. "Dr. Grant, would you please demonstrate the relationship between humans and their companion animals?" Lisa stepped forward, her hand resting gently on Max's head. The dog looked up at her with obvious trust and affection. "Humans have lived alongside other species for thousands of years," she began. "We've formed partnerships based on mutual respect and care. This is Max, my companion and friend." The moment those words left her lips, everything changed. The chamber erupted in alien laughter. Zephyrian scales brightened to amused yellow as they hissed with mirth. The Vorak clicked rapidly among themselves, and even the musical lumens produced harsh, discordant notes. Counselor Vexthal rose from his seat, towering over the human delegation. "You bring a beast to this sacred hall and call it your friend?" His voice dripped with contempt. "This proves exactly what we suspected about your species. You are barely more evolved than the animals you claim to befriend." Hive Speaker Clixes joined the criticism, his mechanical voice growing louder. Intelligent species do not form emotional attachments to inferior creatures. This display shows that humans lack the rational thinking required for galactic citizenship. Crystal singer Zareth added her melodic voice to the chorus of disapproval. The bond you describe is nothing more than primitive dependency. Advanced beings rise above such basic instincts. How can we trust a species that cannot distinguish between equals and animals? The laughter grew louder, echoing off the chamber walls. Other alien species joined in the mockery. Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment and anger, but forced himself to remain calm. Lisa's voice shook as she tried to defend their position. The relationship between humans and animals demonstrates our capacity for empathy and loyalty across species barriers. These qualities could benefit the entire galactic community. But her words were lost in the continued laughter and dismissive comments. Max remained perfectly still throughout the ordeal, sensing his human's distress but trained to stay quiet in formal situations. His brown eyes never left Lisa's face, offering silent support. Counselor Vexthal called for order, his scales still bright with amusement. We have heard enough. The Galactic Council will deliberate on humanity's application. This session is concluded. As the alien delegates filed out, many continued making mocking sounds toward the human delegation. Jake, Lisa, and Max stood alone in the vast hall, the weight of failure heavy around them. They walked back to their quarters in silence, the corridors that had seemed impressive before now feeling cold and unwelcoming. Other aliens they passed looked at them with amusement or disdain. In their shared living space aboard the New Horizon, Jake slumped into a chair and put his head in his hands. That could not have gone worse. Lisa sat beside Max, stroking his fur as the dog sensed her sadness and moved closer to offer comfort. They don't understand, she said quietly. They see only weakness where we see strength. Outside their window, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the dreams and disappointments of the small beings who traveled between them. The three companions from Earth faced an uncertain future, unaware that their real test was still to come. The system failure. 3 days crawled by aboard Kepler Prime like wounded animals. Jake Morrison spent his time reviewing diplomatic protocols, desperately searching for a way to salvage humanity's reputation. The alien delegates made their contempt clear through their actions, avoiding the human delegation in corridors, speaking with barely hidden disdain when forced to interact. Dr. Lisa Grant threw herself into studying alien technology in the station's science bay, making detailed notes about the different species they had encountered. Max stayed by her side as always, his presence providing comfort during these difficult days. The dog seemed to understand that his humans were troubled, remaining more alert than usual. On the evening of the third day, an unexpected invitation arrived. The Galactic Council had arranged a formal dinner to discuss trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Jake saw this as a possible opportunity to rebuild relationships, even if humanity's membership application had been rejected. The dinner took place in the station's largest meeting hall. Long tables filled the room with representatives from dozens of different species sharing food and conversation. The atmosphere seemed relaxed, almost friendly. Jake began to hope that perhaps the aliens were willing to give humanity another chance. Counselor Vexthal approached their table during the meal, his scales returned to their normal green color. His manner seemed less hostile than before. Ambassador Morrison, he said with what might have been politeness, I hope you understand that our criticism was not personal. The Council must maintain high standards. Jake nodded carefully. Of course, Counselor. We respect the Council's decision-making process. Lisa looked up from her conversation with a Lumen scientist. Max lay quietly under the table, having been allowed to attend only after Jake argued that removing him would cause Lisa distress and affect her work performance. The aliens had agreed, though many still cast disapproving glances at the dog. The evening proceeded peacefully until exactly 21:47 hours station time. Without warning, a piercing alarm began to sound throughout the massive structure. Red emergency lights flashed in rhythm with the wailing siren, and the station's artificial intelligence spoke through speakers in every room. Alert! Critical system failure detected in quantum core. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately. This is not a drill. The dinner guests looked around in confusion and growing panic. Zephyrian scales shifted rapidly through various colors, showing their emotional turmoil. The Vorak began clicking frantically among themselves, their forearms gesturing wildly. The lumens produced harsh, discordant notes that hurt human ears. Jake felt the artificial gravity fluctuate beneath his feet. The sensation was like standing on a boat in rough seas, making it difficult to maintain balance. Around the room, aliens struggled with the changing gravitational field. Some species that had evolved in lower gravity found themselves pressed against the floor, while others that needed higher gravity began to float helplessly. The lights flickered and dimmed. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. The station's AI continued its announcements, but static was beginning to interfere with the transmissions. Atmosphere processors experiencing cascade failure. Life support systems operating at 30% capacity. Estimated time to complete atmospheric loss, 47 minutes. Terror rippled through the assembled delegates. The reality of their situation struck home. They were trapped aboard a dying station, 47 minutes from suffocation. Station Commander Thex, a tall, gray-skinned humanoid, burst into the dining hall. His usually calm demeanor had cracked, revealing barely controlled panic. "The quantum core is destabilizing," he announced, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We've lost primary power, backup systems are failing, and the emergency protocols aren't responding. All escape pods have been automatically sealed due to containment breach protocols." Counselor Vexthel's scales darkened to deep purple, the Zephyrian color of fear. "What about evacuation procedures?" "The containment breach means we cannot authorize pod launches," Commander Thex explained. "The station's safety systems are preventing escape to avoid contaminating other vessels or space itself. We're effectively sealed inside until we can restore core functionality." Hive speaker clicks produced rapid, agitated clicks. Through his translator, his mechanical voice asked, "What caused this malfunction?" "Unknown," Commander Thex replied. "The quantum core simply began cascading toward failure. Our best engineers are working on the problem, but..." He paused, the silence speaking volumes. Crystal singer Zaratha's musical tones turned discordant with distress. "How long do we have?" 47 minutes until complete atmospheric loss. But the quantum core could destabilize completely at any moment. If that happens, the explosion would vaporize everything within a 50,000-kilometer radius. The magnitude of their predicament settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. The most advanced species in the galaxy, with all their technology and superiority, were helpless against this mechanical failure. Jake looked around at the panicking aliens. These beings who had mocked humanity's primitive bonds were now faced with their own mortality, and their advanced rational thinking offered no solutions. Max had risen from under the table, his ears alert and his body tense. The dog could sense the fear and desperation filling the room, but he remained calm, focused entirely on Lisa's emotional state. "We need to get to the engineering section," Lisa said suddenly, her scientific mind cutting through the chaos. "If we can understand what's causing the cascade failure, maybe we can find a solution." But even as she spoke, another alarm began wailing. The station shuddered violently, throwing several aliens to the floor. Emergency lighting flickered more rapidly. "Critical alert," the AI announced, its voice now heavily distorted by static. "Quantum containment at 15%. Evacuation recommended but not possible due to security protocols. Estimated time to core breach, 23 minutes. The clock was ticking faster than anyone had imagined. Their window of survival was shrinking rapidly, and their chances of escape seemed impossible. In this moment of absolute crisis, the true test of every species aboard the station was about to begin. The aliens' advanced technology had failed them. Their rational superiority meant nothing in the face of imminent death. Soon, they would discover what truly mattered when everything else fell away. Desperate measures. The station's corridors had become a nightmare of flashing red lights and echoing screams. Aliens who had spent years perfecting their dignified composure now ran frantically through the passages, their advanced rational thinking crumbling under the weight of mortal terror. Jake Morrison found himself running alongside beings who had dismissed humanity as primitive just days before. The irony wasn't lost on him. In the face of death, all their superiority had evaporated. "The engineering section is this way," Commander Thex shouted over the wailing alarms, leading a group of volunteers toward the station's heart. The artificial gravity continued to fluctuate wildly, making each step treacherous. Lisa Grant ran beside Jake, her scientific training keeping her focused despite the chaos. Max stayed close to her side, his 4 legs giving him better stability on the shifting floor than the bipedal beings around them. They reached the engineering section to find it in complete disarray. Sparks flew from damaged control panels, and the air was thick with acrid smoke. Several alien engineers worked desperately at various stations, their previous confidence replaced by frantic desperation. The lead engineer, a multi-armed Vorak named Technician Vith, clicked rapidly as he explained the situation through his translator. "The quantum core's harmonic resonance has become unstable. We cannot determine the cause, and every attempt to correct the frequency only makes it worse." "Show me the readouts," Lisa demanded, her authority as a scientist temporarily overriding the aliens' previous dismissal of human intelligence. The displays showed chaotic patterns that seemed to shift and change with no discernible logic. The quantum field measurements jumped between extremes, defying every known principle of stable containment. 17 minutes to core breach, the AI announced, its voice now barely understandable through static interference. Counselor Vextel had followed them to engineering, his scales cycling rapidly through colors of fear and frustration. "There must be something we can do. The combined knowledge of the galaxy's greatest minds is in this room." But their greatest minds were failing. Each species tried applying their advanced understanding, only to watch their solutions make the situation worse. The lumens attempted to stabilize the field through harmonic resonance, but their crystalline forms couldn't interface properly with the quantum systems. The Zephyrians' mathematical models predicted outcomes that never materialized. The Vorak's collective processing power couldn't find patterns in the chaos. 15 minutes to core breach. All personnel prepare for imminent catastrophic failure. The reality was sinking in, they were going to die. The most advanced species in the galaxy, with technology beyond human comprehension, were powerless against this mechanical failure. Jake noticed Lisa studying something on the side displays, her brow furrowed in concentration. Max sat beside her, his calm presence a stark contrast to the panic surrounding them. "There's something here," Lisa said suddenly. "These secondary readings, they're not random. There's a pattern, but it's not in the quantum field itself." Technician Vith scurried over, his multiple arms working controls frantically. "What pattern?" "We have analyzed every possible frequency combination." "Not frequency," Lisa said, her excitement growing despite their desperate situation. "Movement. Physical movement through the station. Look at these gravitational sensor readings." She pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the station showing gravitational fluctuations over time. "The quantum instability isn't random, it's responding to vibrations. Specific vibrations moving through the station's structure." Commander Thex leaned in, hope flickering in his gray features. "You mean something is causing the resonance cascade?" "Not something," Lisa said, her face pale with realization. "Someone. Or rather, multiple someones. The pattern matches the collective movement of everyone aboard the station. We're all unconsciously moving in rhythm with each other due to panic responses, and that synchronized vibration is destabilizing the quantum core." The room fell silent except for the wailing alarms. 12 minutes to core breach. Hive speaker clickses produced agitated clicks. "If collective movement is causing the problem, how do we stop it? We cannot simply make everyone stand still during an evacuation. Crystal singer Zaratha's melodic voice cracked with distress. Even if we could coordinate such an effort, the fear responses are too strong. Our physiological reactions are beyond conscious control. That's when Lisa looked down at Max, and understanding dawned in her eyes. We need someone who can move through this chaos without panic, she said quietly. Someone who can navigate by instinct rather than fear. Someone who can reach the exact center of the station and provide a stable reference point for recalibrating the quantum field. Jake followed her gaze to the German shepherd, who sat calmly amidst the panic, his brown eyes alert but unafraid. You're not seriously suggesting? Jake began. The quantum core's central chamber has manual override switches, Lisa explained rapidly. But they're in the station's center, through maintenance tunnels too small for most species here. The radiation levels would be lethal to most of us, but a dog his size could potentially make it there and back. Counselor Vexthel's scales shifted to deep purple. You want to send your beast into the most dangerous part of the station? This is madness. 10 minutes to core breach. Quantum containment at 5%. Lisa knelt beside Max, her hands trembling as she stroked his fur. I can't ask this of him. I won't. But Max seemed to understand. He looked up at Lisa, then at the chaos around them, then back to her face. His tail wagged once, a simple gesture that somehow conveyed more courage than all the advanced species in the room possessed. The moment of truth had arrived. The aliens who had mocked the bond between human and animal were about to discover its true power. Their survival now depended on the loyalty, courage, and love they had dismissed as primitive weakness. Max's heroic mission. The silence in the engineering section was deafening, broken only by the wailing alarms and the steady rhythm of Max's breathing. Every alien in the room stared at the German shepherd, their previous mockery now replaced by desperate hope. Lisa's hands shook as she knelt beside her loyal companion. I can't ask this of you, boy. The radiation levels. Her voice broke. But Max pressed his head against her hand, his brown eyes steady and unafraid. In that simple gesture, he communicated what the advanced aliens couldn't understand, that love meant being willing to face any danger for those you cared about. 8 minutes to core breach, the AI announced, its voice now barely recognizable through the static. Commander Thex pulled up the station schematics on a nearby display. The maintenance tunnels are here, he said, pointing to narrow passages that snaked through the station's core. They're barely 2 feet high and wide, designed for automated repair drones, not living beings. Technician Vitha's multiple arms worked frantically at a control panel. The central chamber's manual override requires 3 switches to be activated simultaneously. The sequence must be precise, or the quantum cascade will accelerate. Lisa looked at the complex diagram, her heart sinking. How can he possibly understand which switches to activate? Even if he could reach them. That's when Jake stepped forward, his face grim with determination. Max has been trained for search and rescue operations. He understands complex commands and can follow scent trails through impossible terrain. But this isn't about scent, Counselor Vexthel protested, his scales now a sickly gray color. This requires technical knowledge that even our greatest minds struggle with. Lisa's eyes suddenly brightened with inspiration. No, it doesn't. Max, come here, boy. She led the dog to the display showing the station schematics and pointed to the central chamber. Max, look. Red light's bad. Green light's good. You need to make the red lights turn green. Max studied the display with the intense focus that had made him an exceptional rescue dog. His ears perked forward, and his tail wagged slightly, not with excitement, but with understanding. 6 minutes to core breach. Catastrophic failure imminent. Lisa quickly fashioned a small pack from emergency supplies, attaching it to Max's harness. Inside, she placed a small communication device and emergency medical supplies, though they all knew that if the radiation levels were as high as predicted, medical supplies wouldn't help. The maintenance tunnel entrance is 3 levels down, Commander Thex said, his voice heavy with the weight of their desperate gamble. The journey to the central chamber will take approximately 4 minutes through the tunnel system. That leaves only 2 minutes for him to activate the overrides and return to a safe distance. Hive speaker clickses clicked rapidly, his translator struggling to keep up with his agitated speech. Crystal singer Zareth produced a melody so beautiful and sad that it brought tears to Lisa's eyes. We are asking this creature to sacrifice himself for beings who showed him nothing but contempt. Lisa hugged Max tightly, breathing in his familiar scent, memorizing the feeling of his warm fur against her face. You don't have to do this, boy. You can stay with me. But Max gently pulled away from her embrace and walked to the tunnel entrance that Commander Thex had opened. He looked back once at Lisa, his tail wagging with the confidence that had carried him through countless rescue missions. Go get them, boy, Lisa whispered, her voice thick with tears. Show them what loyalty looks like. Max disappeared into the narrow tunnel, his brown form quickly swallowed by the darkness. The assembled aliens watched the small display that tracked his progress through the station's core, their previous arrogance replaced by humble awe. 4 minutes to core breach. On the tracking display, a small dot representing Max moved steadily through the tunnel system. The radiation readings climbed steadily as he approached the quantum core, reaching levels that would be lethal to most species within minutes. He's moving faster than we calculated, Technician Vith observed, his mechanical clicks more subdued than usual. His four-legged locomotion is more efficient in the narrow spaces. The dot on the display reached the central chamber with 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining. Through the communication device in his pack, they could hear Max's steady breathing, slightly labored from the journey but still strong. 3 minutes to core breach. Quantum containment failing. Lisa leaned into the microphone. Max, can you see the panel? The one with the red lights? Through the speaker, they heard a single bark, Max's way of saying yes. Remember, boy. Red lights bad. You need to make them green. All 3 switches together. The tension in the room was unbearable. Aliens who had dismissed human-animal bonds as primitive weakness now held their breath, waiting to see if this inferior creature could accomplish what their advanced minds could not. Through the communication device, they heard sounds of movement, then the distinctive click of switches being activated. The quantum field readings on their displays began to shift. 2 minutes to core breach. He's doing it, Lisa breathed, watching the readings stabilize slightly. The first switch is activated correctly. A second click came through the speaker, followed by another shift in the quantum readings. The cascade was beginning to slow. 1 minute 30 seconds to core breach. The third click echoed through the speaker system. Suddenly, alarms throughout the station changed tone. Instead of the piercing wail of imminent doom, they heard the steady beep of stabilization protocols engaging. Quantum containment stabilizing, the AI announced, its voice clearer now. Core breach aborted. Emergency protocols successful. The engineering section erupted in celebration, but Lisa was focused entirely on the communication device. Max? Max, can you hear me? You need to get out of there now, boy. The radiation levels are still dangerous. Through the speaker, they heard the sound of claws on metal as Max began his journey back through the tunnels. But his breathing was becoming more labored, and his movements slower. He's been exposed to high levels of radiation for over 6 minutes, Commander Thex said quietly. Even with the core stabilized, the accumulated exposure. Lisa's face went pale. She understood what he wasn't saying. Max had saved them all, but the cost might be his own life. The dot on the tracking display moved more slowly now, stopping occasionally as Max rested during his return journey. Each pause sent waves of anguish through Lisa's heart. After what felt like hours but was only minutes, Max emerged from the maintenance tunnel. He was visibly weakened, his normally bright eyes dim with exhaustion, but his tail still managed a small wag when he saw Lisa. She gathered him into her arms, not caring about potential radiation contamination. You did it, boy. You saved us all. Around them, the alien delegates stood in stunned silence. The creature they had mocked as a mere beast had accomplished what none of their advanced technology could achieve. He had faced death without hesitation, motivated not by logic or self-preservation, but by love. The bond they had dismissed as primitive weakness had just proven to be the strongest force in the galaxy. Recognition and respect. The medical bay of Kepler Prime had never seen such an unusual patient. Max lay on the treatment table while alien medical specialists worked with equipment they had hastily modified for his physiology. The German shepherd was weak from radiation exposure, but his vital signs were stable. Dr. Lisa Grant hadn't left his side for the past 18 hours. Her eyes were red from exhaustion and tears, but she maintained her vigil with the same loyalty Max had shown her. Jake Morrison stood nearby, watching the alien medical team work with a dedication that would have been unimaginable just days before. These beings who had dismissed human-animal bonds as primitive were now pouring all their advanced medical knowledge into saving one dog's life. The cellular damage is extensive but not irreversible, announced Dr. Kelleth, the station's chief medical officer. Her crystalline lumen physiology allowed her to see biological processes at the molecular level. With the proper treatment, he should make a full recovery. Commander Thex entered the medical bay, his usually stern expression softened with something that looked remarkably like humility. Ambassador Morrison, Dr. Grant, the Galactic Council has requested an immediate emergency session. Lisa looked up from Max's side, her voice hoarse. I'm not leaving him. They're not asking you to leave, Commander Thex said gently. They're bringing the session to you. Within the hour, the medical bay had been transformed into an impromptu meeting hall. Representatives from every major species aboard the station gathered around Max's treatment table. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, the Galactic Council was now meeting in the presence of the inferior creature they had mocked. Counselor Vexthal was the first to speak, his scales a color none of the humans had seen before, a deep, respectful blue. Ambassador Morrison, Dr. Grant, he began, his voice lacking its previous arrogance. The Galactic Council owes you and your companion an apology. We allowed our preconceptions to blind us to a truth that nearly cost us all our lives. Hive speaker Clixes produced soft, reverent clicks. Through his translator, his words carried an emotion the humans had never heard from the Vorak before, shame. We pride ourselves on logical thinking, yet we failed to recognize the most logical force in the universe, the power of selfless dedication. Crystal singer Zaratha's melody was haunting and beautiful as she spoke. We have spent millennia perfecting our individual abilities, but we forgot that true strength often comes from the bonds between different beings. Jake felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. Max didn't save you to prove a point, he said quietly. He did it because that's who he is. That's what love looks like. Dr. Kelleth, still monitoring Max's vital signs, spoke without looking up from her instruments. In all our medical databases, across hundreds of species, we have no records of any being voluntarily exposing themselves to lethal radiation levels to save others they had just met. The closest comparisons are found only in historical accounts of bonded pairs, parents saving children, mates sacrificing for each other. But he saved us all, Counselor Vexthal said, the weight of realization heavy in his voice. Beings who had shown him nothing but contempt. His loyalty extended beyond his immediate bond to encompass every life on this station. Lisa stroked Max's fur gently, her voice barely above a whisper. That's what we tried to tell you. The bonds we form don't make us weak. They make us capable of extraordinary things. The Galactic Council members exchanged glances, each species conducting their own form of silent communication. Finally, Counselor Vexthal spoke again. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision, he announced formally. Humanity's application for membership is not only approved but fast-tracked to full status. Your species has demonstrated qualities that many of us had forgotten, courage born not from aggression, but from love, strength that comes not from individual power, but from connections to others. Furthermore, Crystal singer Zarath added, her tones creating a melody of profound respect, we hereby establish the Max Protocol, a new provision in our galactic charter recognizing that intelligence and worth cannot be measured by technology alone, but must include the capacity for selfless loyalty and love. Hive speaker clicks produced a series of clicks that his translator rendered as formal ceremony language. Let it be recorded that the first act of the newest member of the Galactic Council was to save the lives of those who had rejected them. This shall serve as a reminder to all future generations of what true civilization looks like. Max stirred on the treatment table, his brown eyes opening to look at Lisa. His tail managed a weak wag, and Lisa leaned down to whisper in his ear. "You hear that, boy? You're not just a good dog anymore. You're a galactic hero." But Max's attention wasn't on the assembled alien dignitaries or their formal declarations. His focus was entirely on Lisa's face, reading her emotions, ensuring she was safe and well. To him, none of the ceremony mattered as much as the simple fact that his human was okay. Dr. Kelleth smiled, a remarkably human expression for a crystalline being. "His recovery is progressing faster than our models predicted. The bond between you two seems to be accelerating his healing process." Over the following weeks, as Max regained his strength, the dynamics aboard Kepler Prime changed dramatically. Alien delegates who had once avoided the human quarters now visited regularly, not to see the humans, but to spend time with Max. They would sit quietly in his presence, seemingly drawing comfort from his calm, accepting nature. The Zephyrian youth delegation was particularly fascinated. "How does he know when someone is sad?" young counselor Thyss asked Lisa one day, watching as Max approached a distressed Vorak engineer and simply sat beside him. "He reads body language, scent, vocal tones, thousands of subtle cues that most of us miss," Lisa explained. "But more than that, he cares enough to pay attention." The transformation was remarkable. Species that had been isolated by their own superiority began forming unexpected connections. The Vorak started teaching their clicking language to other species. The Lumens began creating musical collaborations with alien delegates. The Zephyrians organized cultural exchange programs. All because a dog had shown them what it meant to care for others. 3 months later, as the New Horizon prepared to depart Kepler Prime, the farewell ceremony was unlike anything in Galactic Council history. Representatives from dozens of species gathered not just to bid farewell to humanity's first ambassador, but to honor the four-legged hero who had changed their understanding of civilization itself. Max, now fully recovered and wearing a specially crafted collar embedded with crystals from each member species, seemed bemused by all the attention. He sat calmly beside Lisa, occasionally accepting the respectful greetings of alien dignitaries who approached to offer their gratitude. "The Galactic Council has prepared a gift," Counselor Vexthal announced, his scales now permanently showing the blue of deep respect when he looked at the humans. "A new starship, the GSV Loyalty, designed specifically for humanity's diplomatic missions. It includes facilities for companion animals and their care." Jake felt tears in his eyes. "We're honored by your generosity." "It is we who are honored," crystal singer Zareth replied, her melody carrying harmonics of profound gratitude. "Your companion has taught us that true strength lies not in what we achieve alone, but in what we're willing to sacrifice for others." As the New Horizon departed Kepler Prime, its cargo hold filled with gifts and its computers loaded with new knowledge, Jake stood once again at the viewing window. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Lisa stood beside him with Max at her side, and the weight on Jake's shoulders was no longer the burden of failure, but the responsibility of success. "So what happens now?" Lisa asked, watching the space station grow smaller in the distance. "Now we go home," Jake said, "and tell humanity that we're no longer alone in the universe. And that sometimes, the most important ambassadors have 4 legs and a tail." Max looked up at both of them, his brown eyes bright with contentment. He didn't understand galactic politics or interspecies diplomacy. He only knew that his humans were happy, and that was all that mattered to him. Behind them, the stars continued their ancient dance, but now they seemed warmer somehow, less indifferent to the small acts of love and loyalty that illuminated the darkness. In the end, It hadn't been advanced technology or superior intellect that opened the doors to galactic civilization. It had been the simple, primitive, beautiful bond between a human and her dog, a bond that proved love was indeed the most powerful force in the universe. The aliens had mocked human pets, calling them inferior creatures and symbols of primitive dependency. But when the moment of truth arrived, when death threatened to claim them all, it was that mocked bond that saved every life aboard Kepler Prime. Max had unleashed hell not through violence or aggression, but through the pure, unstoppable force of loyalty and love. And in doing so, he had not only saved lives, he had changed the galaxy forever. The end.